whatever looked easiest. I took that off first and then moved from there. So theoretically the easiest way to put everything back together would be reverse order from what I did earlier. So that means the first thing I'll do is clutch fork rod, and I'll safety wire that the way the original owner had it safety wired, and the clutch fork spring, I'll put that back on. The shifter bracket, and after the shifter bracket's installed, I'll grease the shifter bracket. The pivot points there inside that bracket, I'll grease that with the wheel bearing grease I was using earlier. Then I'll install the speedometer cable, the transmission mount, then the transmission mount bracket, then the exhaust hanger assembly, then the shift linkage arms, where the shift linkage arms connect to the transmission, those 3 points, and then I'll grease the shift linkage arms at the pivot points with the wheel bearing grease. And then the last thing I'll do is the drive shaft. Once that's done, all I need to do is check servicing on the transmission and drive it. This is the clutch rod, and it's attached right here, and then it's just, a cotter pin. If you lose that cotter pin, then the whole front of it could come loose, and then the whole rod could just fall out on the highway, and you lose it. You wouldn't be able to put it back together. So I've seen this before. It was safety wired to the clutch fork, and that's pretty smart. The spring is on there, right there, and I've got the safety wire looped a couple times around the rod, and then twisted up to the point where the hole is for the spring, and I got it through there. And then I just need to twist this here and pigtail it, and then that'll be somewhat secured. And that's sharp right there, so we'll just put a pigtail on there like that. Here's my shift linkage. It installs from the bottom, and bolts with 3 bolts, one there, and one there to the tail shaft of the transmission. I cleaned it on my wire wheel on my bench grinder and painted it black. This right here installs right there with these 2 bolts, and once it's all up there and installed, I'll apply a lot of grease inside this channel. So I had already put the 2 smaller bolts in to secure this channel, little bracket on there. Those took a 7/16 setup, and then the 3 bigger bolts that secure it, they're in there now, holding the bracket assembly to the tail shaft housing. So like I say, now I need to lube it all up, so I'm going to grab a few fingerfuls of bearing grease. Got some grease on the speedometer cable right there where it goes in, and that just stabs right in like that, easy enough. And then you got this threaded collar right there, and that screws on finger tight. There, and more. Yeah, that's tight, and that's your speedometer cable. Transmission mount is back on there. 2 bolts, tight. Then there's the transmission mount bracket with the long bolt that goes right there, and the lock washer and nut, right there, and 2 bolts that go right there. Now I'm ready for my exhaust hanger, but my exhaust hanger did not come off in one piece. One of these was already completely torn apart, and the other one came apart pretty easily as well. So I got in touch with Corvette Central, and they sent me a rebuild kit which comes with that and that and that, and that, and the rivets to hold the whole thing together. The rivets go in like, I don't know if you can see it, that way, and that way, and then the top part just gets smushed out like those are. I drilled the old rivets out, and that's what they look like. So they're in like that, and then you just drill this top part out of there, and then they come out. So with the old rivets out, I was able to clean it up on the wire wheel on the bench grinder, and then paint everything, and then install the new kit from Corvette Central. I'd never installed this type of rivet before, but it was pretty easy. Stuck it in there, had it sitting on the bench right there, supporting that side of it, holding that flat, and then I just kind of held everything together there. Used this punch to get in there and start spreading it out. This one I spread it out quite a bit before I hammered it flat. So mushroomed it out and then hammered it flat, and that one came out like that. This one I think came out cleaner. I didn't mushroom it out as much with the punch, just a little bit, and then I hammered it flat, and I think that side looks better. I jacked up my transmission. I removed the toolbox and the wooden boards that were propping up the back of the engine, and I set the transmission using my floor jack with the exact height that it needed to fully install the transmission mount bracket, and the exhaust hanger. So that's all installed now, and the ground straps are installed. For all of that, there's just there's 2 bolts here, and the one that goes across right there, and then one straight up from there, obviously, the exhaust hanger that goes through the transmission mount bracket, and then one right here that goes through the transmission mount bracket, and then up into a bracket that comes off of this crossmember part of the frame. So anyway, now the transmission is supported by the transmission mount, the bracket, which is fully installed, and the exhaust pipes are supported. And I can go ahead and get my jack out of here because I'm done with that. Alright, and then also I went ahead and hooked up the linkage, the shifter linkage to the transmission, and lubed that up with some bearing grease. So again, 1, 2, and 3 points back there. And I just hooked everything up right back the way it was before. When I torqued the nuts, a couple of the shift levers, clicked over into into a detent because I was turning the nuts clockwise to tighten them. And then once I had the nut torqued all the way, then I just put it back into the detent where it was when I took it apart, which was neutral. The 2 forward levers straight up, and the rear kind of forward there. And that just goes right in. Like that. The transmission's in neutral, and our caps are at the 3 and 9 o'clock position, and I've got some electrical tape on here that I want to take off carefully. Because I don't want to pull these caps off of there. Alright, and then that just moves up into position. That comes back. Tricky with one hand. Everything's easier with 2 hands. Alright. So that's seated. There's just a little kind of foot sticking out right there, and one on the other side. And obviously you want to get the caps inside of those, and then that keeps it from
moving laterally, and then these keep it from popping out. Servicing a manual transmission is a lot easier than an automatic transmission. Normally you've got two plugs. The top one is your fuel plug and the bottom one is your drain plug. I'm not going to drain the gear oil, I'm just going to fill it up. So you grab an all 16ths wrench like this one, break torque on that, and pull that plug out of there. Get yourself some 80-90 weight gear oil like this stuff. And that goes right in there. You start pumping. And you keep going until it starts coming out of the fuel hole, and that's how you know when it's full. Okay, so it's got a drip there, and another drip, and another drip. So that's it. That's full. Pull the hose out of there. Gonna make a mess on the ground. And grab this plug. Put it back in there. All 16th wrench. Tighten the plug. The fuel plug is tight. And then find a rag.